So, how much time am I giving?
15.
Okay, so I will briefly try to elaborate a little bit about this judicial framework for decision making and the way that I see it a little bit, because like in previous times I really expanded about the codes, and now I want to expand about the decision making. So I start as usual with the fact that the history of planning of the built environment, of the human built environment, is actually the history of principles, abstract principles and codes. And I'm giving just a few drawings from the Simcha King's work about the codes in the Middle East and the way that a mutual agreement about specific codes enabled the development of cities in the Middle East, throughout the Middle East, since, I don't know, the 5th or the 6th century until well into the 20th century. And of course the rules changed and developed, but again they were shared throughout the Middle East for many years. And like, for example, one example of how you can see that there is no comprehensive plan, but clearly there is a code, a mutual code of how to build houses and how to relate to one another, etc. And I'm claiming that this coding is not specific to the Middle East, of course. Like, for example, Wendy Ashmore did a lot of research about Mayan cities in the center of the Americas, and South America, and she discovered what she called spatial patterning of, she did not find anything written, but she analyzed and found that there is a spatial expression of both politics and cultural or cosmopolitan cosmology principles that were operating there. And of course the same in Europe, German cities, and Emily Talen discussed Netherlands. So this is the basic the basis of my presentation, and then I go to Christopher Alexander. I don't have to present it here. The idea of natural cities that develop according to these codes and the quality without a name that is shared by these cities and places. But then again, there is something that I want to focus, because again, stating Christopher Alexander, within the framework of a common language, millions of individuals act on buildings will together generate a town which is alive, a whole, unpredictable, etc., without control. It's my stressing, but nevertheless it's Alexander's words. Again, another place saying that this process will happen of its own accord if we only let it. And I want to challenge both these visions, that it will happen automatically without control, without only if we let it. And I want to say that there is a mechanism behind it. And now I want to turn to a few examples. One of the main examples is the work of Jamal Akbar. His book, marvelous book about the crisis in the built environment, in which he discussed the mechanism of applying these general codes, for example, described by Hakim and known throughout the Middle East. And according to his analysis, there was always a negotiation between people that were involved in planning something, some new instrument, some new building or anything in the built environment. And this negotiation were between the owners, the controllers, and the users of this built element. Sometimes there were the same person, the owner, the controller, and the users. For example, if you're building your own apartment, you're the owner, you're controller of the inside interiors, and you're the user. So you negotiate with yourself. But sometimes there are three different, and sometimes there is the owner and the controller. For example, when you rent your apartment and the user, and there is this negotiation. And this is a pattern of responsibility, according to Akbar. And these negotiations, they were not just free, they were all subjected to this code, because people knew the code, they knew the limits and the customs, and they knew what they can expect. So they were negotiating. Sometimes the negotiations were even implicit. They were not really negotiating, but just, saying, okay, I'll do this, okay, everybody accepts. Sometimes they were really fighting on something, but the background was these rules that existed, and these negotiations actually enabled people to both strengthen the code, or sometimes even change it a little bit, and it created a vertical, discussion between users. Sometimes you have to discuss with your neighbor because you want to build something and you want the permission and you want the acceptance. Sometimes it is someone far away, but people had to discuss all the time when they wanted to make changes in the built environment. And according to Akbar, this is the reason of the crisis in the built environment, because this method suddenly disappeared. It was abruptly ended when the modern planning habit was introduced, because it replaced, as Maisa said before, it replaced the vertical discussions with the acceptance of the authorities. So you don't need to discuss other people. Now you need to get the acceptance of the authority. So all the complex way of developing the codes suddenly ended, and people were not negotiating. Nothing evolved, co-evolved anymore, because people had to get the permission from a central place. And this is, according to Akbar, the reason for the crisis in the built environment. So there was a mutual agreement procedure that ceased at once. Another quick example is something that I found in the book of Pignon. Oh, it's so sad. Maybe I will skip it, just to say that mutual agreements also evolved in Paris in the 19th and 20th century between holders of buildings. Believe me, it was maybe. So, two conclusions. One, that negotiations were an essential part of having a code, of having a planning code, unlike the anticipation of Christopher Alexander, and that the withdrawal from this method of mutual understanding is the reason for the crisis in the built environment. So now I want to say that I see an opportunity in the way that we see smart growth code in America. We see the consolidation of the PPS and PPG into the national planning framework in the United Kingdom. We see in Israel, we see in a lot of places. We see in Holland, in Almere, the tendency to,
There's more.
to use codes. So I see it as an opportunity, but I want to say that codes are not enough. We need to change planning institutions, and we need to reconstruct the place for mutual agreement. And to my view, so this is theory also interested in codes, and to my view, we need to set it on a separation of authorities. If we have a body that is making rules and codes, we need a separate, independent body to take decisions regarding specific planning matters. So the division between these two is, to my point, crucial. We cannot have this planning legislature and the specific decisions by the same body, which is in a way the way that planning institutions are built in many places, because those who are entitled of the rules are also those who make the specific decisions. Them or their extension of the same body are making the specific decisions, and this is, to my point, to my claim, is not enabling the co-evolution. I will just skip this one to say that we clearly understand that land use planning top to down is closed, it's static, it is predictable, and we know that code-based planning is open, dynamic, unpredictable. But I want to say that the first is specifically bound by the orientation towards specific results. And this is one thing that we need to make clear to make sure that it's not operating when we are working with codes. We need to be separated from the specific interests and to provide space for feedback from the built environment, from the urban space. If we don't do this, then urban code, as it is, will not help us to reach toward the co-evolution. So I want to say that it is also very compatible with the way that planning actually evolves, because we know that even though we have planning codes, or sometimes when we have master plans and top-to-down plans, we know that the actual development is actually being done by local deals. Whenever we have a detailed plan, it is actually a deal between the local planners who are assigning rights to specific developers, and those developers that are agreeing to be working according to specific limitations and codes, and so this agreement is operating throughout the built environment. And I want to say that in all other fields, deals and agreements are conducted according to rules and are judged according to specific rules by judges. Only in the built environment we expect both coding and decision making to be at the same body. So we need to separate them into two bodies. So again, I will skip this one just to say that it is also the reason for the poor performance of land use planning. But I would just say that it is will be much more consistent with the principles of liberal democracy if we act like this. And I want to say that our challenge is to make codes shared by all actors, to keep the case-by-case dynamic, but make code not be coerced or amended according to specific interests, and to make them a living body of rules in order to enable co-evolution. So we have a semi-judiciary authorizing arena that will be able to work separately and take into account both the codes and the circumstances, and it will be not it will be independent of the authorities of the local government. It must be independent, otherwise we don't have this co-evolution atmosphere that we seek. This is it.
Okay, Professor De Roo, first respondent.
Nuri, thank you so much. Another inspiring talk, and well, these talks continue. I keep dreaming away about my own ideas and reshape my own frame of reference while again repeating, listening to what you've been saying. I've thought about what you wrote down on paper, but in sort of in essence it all comes down, and I think that is what you make so specific, is the struggle continuously between spontaneous change and purposeful intervention. How do we deal with that? Of course, in this, balancing these questions, we seek for something to hold on to. And that's the continuous struggle. We find new notions and we throw them away as easily because then we consider they don't work that well. So let me try to interact with the notions you propose, to find something to hold on to while we have our expectations, while we anticipate and while we act. The code-based decision-making, that's what I liked as well as one of the notions you propose. But if you fill it in, you come to a whole set of notions which could be code-based decision-making. Form, function, official, informal, common, historic, social. And then again, I drown and back among us, again considering, my goodness, okay, are we now back to the beginning or have we at least reached something at a higher level? Of course, I don't have the answer as well. I do hope we reach another level. In a way, you're also talking about rule of order and you're trying to seek ordering principles. And I think that could be the key, these ordering principles. If you could define the strict rules, which we traditionally have, as one portion of the whole story, and we could define the agreed consensus as another set of ordering principles that guide us, and we can differentiate, also including, perhaps, transformative conditions, which sort of fits there maybe in the middle, where we know that the world is changing, that we know there are conditions to hold on to. Basically, the story also what shared with us a process of seeking the right words, the right notions, which allow us to understand transformation, which is there as well. But I guess, and I think this is in the previous slides interesting, you were referring to a living body of rules. Perhaps that's maybe slightly biological, but a co-evolving body of rules. Well, that would be exciting. Wouldn't know where it would lead to, but it sort of fits in all these stories, in what we're trying to find and what we want to give identity. So, thank you so much.
Have you got a question?
No, definitely not. I'm just.
Do you want to reflect on this?
I'm reflecting because.
First of all, I do agree with your observation that the fight is against decision-making that is biased towards specific results. This is something that is really the big threat, I don't know, of what we do, because it is exactly what is poking and disturbing the co-evolution. Because if we have and we know that we are surrounded by full and variety of interests and powers, and we need to find a way to make these powers controlled by someone or something that is saying, okay, specific interests are welcomed, but not through this way, but they have to go through a specific way that will make them part of the system. And this is the challenge, because at least my challenge is all the time thinking, how do we regulate planning? This is the question that is driving the whole idea. How do we regulate? If we understand that this is the idea, if we understand that this is the environment, it is complex, it is, how do we regulate planning? So this is the idea.
The golden question.
Yes. So, for example, about Rous's words presentation, I think that we have a kind of vision in every rule, in every code. But in order to have a comprehensive vision of all rules, we need to be very, again, specific, code specific or end specific. And this is something that we really, to my view, need to be careful of. We can, have this vision in the discrete codes, but not the comprehensive one.
I like the mutual agreement approach,
Okay,
although I missed some kind of different scales.
okay.
Because I think we always had mutual agreements at many levels, and I think we gave up on the local mutual agreements and just have the big
Yeah.
mutual agreements towards our way of doing cities. But I was wondering, because Bart made this distinction between streets, blocks, and neighborhoods.
Yeah,
I wonder if there would be, in your perspective, contexts in which mutual agreements would be advisable and others that will be not so necessary for the city. I'm talking about also the large scale of the city, of the urban fabric, also Machu Picchu and all these pre-industrial cities had this ground level construction, but then they had the major urban features, which depended from other level of mutual agreements. So I missed that.
Okay.
Some reflection on that different scales.
So clearly, in modern times, in current times, I don't know if it's modern. In current times, we cannot expect people to negotiate with neighbors because we are not on equal level. Because we have developers coming from out of state to develop a lot of money and to invest a lot of money, and we know that we are small developers and middle developers and large developers, and a lot of interest. It's impossible, it's impractical. So I'm thinking that, okay, we already have this arena for solving issues at all scales, and this arena is the judicial system. We can, drag, Coca-Cola to the court if we have a small person, like recently happened in Israel, having something, to say, to comply. So this is the frame that I'm thinking about. Now, I'm thinking about this frame as the one that is crossing the scales. I mean, it is good also for very small scales, where we don't need the whole crowd to be in, because if you want to build a house, it is similar in a way to others in the street. Unless there is an objection or somebody, it can go on, and we don't need this. But if we have bigger, proposal or plan, then we can discuss it in this, and the crowd is changing. And the way that we have, like the courts in Israel, we have the local, the regional, the upper, so the Supreme Court, we can have the same here. And we can also have the municipality's plan discussed here, because if the municipality want to, build a school or university or to make a road, it will also have to comply with certain codes and rules. So this is how it should be, and we can also take into considerations the way that the executive authority is thinking about things. For example, if the state thinks that it wants to develop Beersheba into a regional district, so they want to put the university and the hospital over there, and they want to have a railway line and things. So, when you have a specific plan, you need to deal with it in this place, and we can consider, we can listen. If you object to a specific plan because you have huge plans for this place, we can, but nevertheless we have rules. We cannot avoid the rules. So this is the way I'm thinking, that this is the arena for mutual agreement.
I have a totally different question, so I don't know if Hans wants to relate to this topic.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It made me think of new things, and it also brought me a little bit back to the self-organization debate. In the northern parts of the Netherlands, I've been trying to use the approach of self-organization to understand the structuring of local energy initiatives. But what I was really struggling with was finding a tiebreaker to determine is this a self-organizing process or is this a self-governing process? And what I found was that the role of intentionality was very crucial here, and I think relating to our story, this is also very crucial in building adaptive capacity. And in the start of your presentation, you showed multiple Venn diagrams, and they showed that these would break the potential for self-organization. Did I understand this correctly? And if so, could you maybe elaborate on how these issues inhibit self-organization?
To my view, this process and this division is meant to enable self-organization. It is meant to say we cannot control self-organization, but we can make sure that certain qualities of the built environment are kept. I mean, we don't know exactly if the city will go to the north or to the west, if it will be a city of students or of painters and artists. We cannot control this order, but we can make sure that one building is not shading the other. We can make sure that the streets are wide enough for the places are wide enough for people to pass. We can make sure that everybody has accessibility or enough, room for something. These qualities, we can make sure that we can control them by the discrete codes and the fact that the court is reviewing that these values are kept.
Okay. So I'm trying to relate it very much to Mark's presentation on the adaptive capacity.
Yeah.
Mark said we need both to secure, generate, and stimulate.
Yes.
So would we have to embed this within securing, which is, I think, the strongest condition of the set, because you're talking about pretty much quality of life determining processes? Or should this be in the generate section, because we're talking about self-organization, building in adaptive capacity on a system level? So I'm trying to position this here.
Yeah.
Could you maybe elaborate?
To my view,
Short
it will be only securing. I mean, this is the only thing. If you want to generate something, everybody are invited to generate, from the smallest to the biggest, but this is not in the rules. The rules are only securing certain freedoms and rights of people. That's all.
Okay.
All the rest is open for initiation.
So you can ask a question, Hannes, but then I will take it off your presentation. What am I at?
Shall I then tell a story?
Your story?
Shall I then instead tell a story?
Yes, let's do that. Okay.